The news is on the air that recently the Inspector General of Police has directed all commissioners of police in different states in Nigeria to implement the compulsory treatment and care for victims of Gunshot Act 2017. Now, the act itself, that is the compulsory treatment and care for victims of Gunshot Act 2017, was an act signed into law by the last regime. It has 16 sections, and we are going to just do a summary of the provisions of this law so that we will be able to see what the law provides for. Section 1 of the said act provides that as from the commencement of the act, every hospital in Nigeria, whether public or private, shall accept or receive for immediate and adequate treatment with or without police clearance any person with gunshot wound. By virtue of this section, every hospital in Nigeria, be it a private hospital or a public hospital, once you are a hospital in Nigeria, you are duty bound, because the provision of the law says shall. You are duty bound to accept and to receive, for immediate and adequate treatment, anybody who has gunshot injury without requesting for police clearance. Now, the situation before the enactment of this law is that usually whenever someone that has gunshot injury goes to any hospital, the suspicion is that the person could be an armed robber, maybe who sustained gunshot injury on the process of trying to escape, and so doctors are always skeptical in treating them. So in the past, people used to die, people who have gunshot injuries used to die as a result of the fact that most hospitals will always reject them. Even when they take them to hospital without clearance, doctors will not touch them because no doctor won't enter trouble. In the course of investigation, security agencies in the past can actually hold hospitals that treated victims of gunshot injury liable and ask them to explain, why they had to treat such persons, or even rope the person in any case that the person may be connected with. And so a lot of people used to die in the past because of neglect. It was as a result of this problem, and then with reforms that come with this perception to victims of gunshot injury, because a lot of innocent people who sustain gunshot injury, even from the armed robbers, for instance, if an armed robber attacked you and then maybe you are fortunate to escape, if you go to hospital will not treat you just because you have gunshot injury. And so innocent people have actually in the past died as a result of the fact that doctors and hospitals are afraid of treating people who have gunshot injuries. But with the provision of this law now, the law has said that every hospital, be it a public hospital or private hospital, that you are duty bound. It is compulsory. It is non-negotiable that once you see or somebody is brought to the facility, that hospital facility that has a gunshot injury, whether the person is a criminal, whether the person is an armed robber, it is not your business to find out what actually led to the gunshot injury, or whether the person is innocent is not your business. The law says you must accept that person for treatment. That is the import of the provision of Section 1 of that particular act. Section 2 provides that every person, including security agents, shall render every possible assistance to any person with gunshot wound and ensure that the person is taken to the nearest hospital for immediate treatment. Section 2 of this act, of course, binds everybody. While Section 1 is particular to hospitals, Section 2 is saying that everybody, including you and I, that we have an obligation, every person, whoever it is, whether you're a doctor, whether you're not a doctor, whether you're a passerby, whether you saw the victim of gunshot injury by accident, however you come by someone who has gunshot injury, Section 2 says that you are duty bound to render every assistance to such a person, and you are to ensure that the person is taken to the nearest hospital for immediate treatment. Remember that if you fail to do this, you have violated this law. So accordingly, a person with a gunshot injury, that is Section 2, subsection 2, paragraph A, say that a person with a gunshot injury shall be received for immediate treatment and adequate treatment by any hospital in Nigeria with or without initial monetary deposit, And a person with a gunshot injury shall not be subjected to inhuman and degrading treatment or torture by any person or authority, including the police or other security agencies. These subsections is actually saying that when a victim of gunshot injury is taken to the hospital, whether there is a deposit made on behalf of the person for the person's treatment or not, that the hospital must be able to accept and treat that person. And again, police cannot, even if that person is a criminal suspect or armed robbery suspect, whatever the person is, the law is saying here that the police cannot, or whoever cannot, subject that person to torture or inhuman or degrading treatment. Now, Section 3 says, and Section 3 has subsection 1 and 2. Subsection 1 of Section 3 says, a hospital that receives or accepts any person with gunshot injury for treatment shall report the fact to the nearest police station within 2 hours of commencement of treatment. So, once the person is brought to the hospital, you are duty bound to report to the nearest police station within 2 hours, that hospital, that someone that has a gunshot injury is in your facility and the person is receiving treatment. Now, upon receipt of such reports from the hospital, the police shall now commence investigation with a view to determine the circumstances, which led to the person's gunshot injury. Section 4 says that the police shall not invite any person with gunshot injury or gunshot wound, from the hospital for the purpose of investigation unless the CMD, that is the Chief Medical Director of the hospital, certifies him fit and that the person is no longer in their need of medical care. That is to say, once someone is in the facility taking treatment for his gunshot injury, even if he's a criminal suspect, the police cannot invite such person for investigation unless the Chief Medical Director of the hospital has certified that that person is fit and the person does not need any medical care any longer. Section 5 says that a hospital that fails to make a report as required under Section 3, that Section 3 requires the hospital to make report within 2 hours of the person coming to your facility. If you fail to make that particular report, that hospital commits an offense and the hospital is liable upon conviction to a fine of 100,000 naira, and every doctor directly concerned with the treatment is equally liable to a conviction for a term of 6 months or fine of 500,000 naira or imprisonment or both. That is the penalty if you fail to report to the nearest police station within 2 hours that someone with a gunshot injury was brought to your facility. Section 6 says that the person who received the report under Section 3, Section 2 of this Act shall furnish or the hospital on demand with background information of the victim as he may be compelled to incriminate the victim. So, if you are the one that received the report, you can be compelled actually in the course of investigation for you to review the background, what you know about the person that you reported or the person that you assisted and brought to the hospital for treatment. A person who fails or neglects or refuses to give a report required under Section 6 of this Act commits an offense and is liable for conviction for 50,000 naira or imprisonment for a term of 6 months or both. So if you fail not to give the needed report, stating the background, how you come across the person that you brought to the hospital and all that, if you fail not to state that, of course, it's an offense. Then every volunteer or helper of a victim of gunshot injury shall be treated with respect and shall not be subjected to unnecessary and embarrassing interrogation in their genuine attempt to save a life. So this particular Section 8 is intended to protect a volunteer, someone who saw a victim of gunshot injury and volunteered to help. So the law says you are protected and they should not be subjected to unnecessary embarrassment and interrogating questions because you are just out there on a mission to actually save life. Section 9 says that a person who commits an offense under this Act which leads to a cause of substantial physical, mental, or emotional and psychological damage to the victim commits an offense and is liable upon conviction for a term of not more than 15 years and not less than 5 years without the option of fine. So if you are found culpable in causing substantial physical, mental, emotional, or psychological damage to the victim of gunshot injury, maybe by what you did or what you failed to do, what we call in law acts of omissions and acts of commission. So whichever way you contributed to not taking care of that victim of gunshot injury, the law says that you can actually be fined up to 500,000 naira or imprisonment for 5 years or both. Okay, now section 12 of that law says that a hospital or a facility that makes or receives treatment of any person that has a gunshot injury, the person should keep adequate record of the treatment. One will begin to ask, what is the essence of this record? This law did not provide for who will pay for the expenditures incurred in the treatment of such gunshot injuries, because that is one inadequacy that is contained in this law. Because in a situation where you are mandating a public hospital or a private hospital and even private citizens to take a victim of gunshot injury to hospital for treatment, and the law did not make provision as to how the treatment will be financed, is a lacuna in this law. But section 12 has said that hospital should keep record of such treatment. The law did not state here that the record that should be kept is actually the record in terms of the cost of the treatment. The law says adequate record. So one can actually say that adequate record should also include the cost of the treatment. But yet, the law did not make any provision as to how what is incurred in treatment will be repaid. Section 13 of the Act provides that a corporate body that commits an offence under this Act, the head of the corporate body shall be prosecuted in accordance with provisions of Section 11 and Section 14 of this Act. What they mean by corporate body here is a registered company, for instance, maybe a hospital. If it is the hospital that commits that offence, the law says that the head of that corporate body should be the one to be prosecuted. Section 14 subsection 1 says that in addition to any other penalty under the Act, the High Court shall order a person or corporate body convicted of an offence to make restitution to the victim by directing that the person or corporate body to pay the victim an amount equivalent to the loss sustained by the victim. So it does not just end in you, maybe if you're a hospital and you fail in your obligation under this Act, or you're a private individual and you fail in your obligation under this Act. It does not just end in your conviction as stated above. This law has gone ahead to make provision that the court, that is the High Court in this time around, can actually order you to pay restitution, that is to pay for whatever the person may have lost in consequence to the contribution you made to the injury the person actually suffered. Subsection 2 of Section 14 says that an order of restitution may be enforced by the victim or by the prosecutor on behalf of the victim in the same manner as judgment in civil actions. This actually is the summary of the provision of the Compulsory Treatment and Care for Victims of Gunshot Act 2017. Now that you have known the provisions of this law, it is good that you do your own by spreading this message, sharing this message, so that doctors, hospitals, everybody in Nigeria should be able to be aware of the provisions of this law, so that we don't fall short of the provisions of this law and you will be at the right standing with the law. Thank you so much.